Well, it's a privilege to be here and to be doing a video of the retreat that I'm giving for St. Brigid's. And I first heard about St. Brigid's back in 2007, 2008, when I was at St. John's for a year doing monastic studies. And it's just great to see how the community has grown, thrived, and really become a model for new forms of Benedictine life. And I've been invited to talk about community. So I want to explore how community is one of the key foundational characteristics that makes us Benedictine, whether we are traditional Cenobedic Benedictines or trailblazing pioneers of new ways to be Benedictine like you all. But first, as we get started, I'd like to do something very Benedictine with some Visio Divina. I'd invite you to relax, and I'll start screen sharing, and we'll just spend 5 minutes with the picture and quote, and just see where this picture takes you that I'm about to show you. And then I'd invite you to just stop the video. And again, spend 5 minutes, just ponder, reflect, see where this picture takes you. Seems like that. And then after you stop, take 5 minutes of reflection, then start up the video again. Now, I use this picture a lot, and I often include the quote, "We're all just walking each other home." Isn't that a great quote? We're all just walking each other home. Because that's Benedictine community, isn't it? We're all just walking each other home, and we are going all together to everlasting life. For us as Benedictines, community is fundamental, it's foundational, and to do it well, we need to spend time reflecting on what that means. So I'm going to talk broadly about some key characteristics of Benedictine community, and then we're going to spend some time reflecting on and discussing, if you are in a community doing this video, how we actually live community. We're all Benedictines, and that means community isn't a theory, it's a lived experience. So, today I'm going to explore 3 main points. The first is that community is rooted and grounded in our relationship with God. We see that in how Benedict incorporates new members into his community, and we'll talk about that. Second, community is also a practice. It isn't just a nice idea or simply a good value. It is something that we have to do, to live daily, because the daily practice is how we are changed and transformed. And then third, being a community has several key aspects, including being of service to one another, stability, and then support and accountability. Of course, as we know, Benedict was nothing if not practical. Anyone who can mandate not wearing your knife to bed and how much wine each monk should drink could have is not your go-to guy for esoteric philosophy. But I think that we begin our discussion about community by looking at how he incorporated new members into the monastery, how monks became part of the community, and what that has to say to us. So Benedict doesn't spend a whole lot of time talking about the process of how monks become members, but in the fairly short chapter 58, there's a lot of symbolism and meaning packed into a few verses. Let's read from chapter 58. He states his promise in a document drawn up in the name of the saints and of the abbot who is present. The novice writes out this document himself and with his own hand lays it on the altar. After he has put it there, the novice himself begins the verse, "Receive me, Lord, as you have promised, and I shall live. Do not disappoint me in my hope." The whole community repeats the verse 3 times and adds, "Glory be to the Father." Then the novice prostrates himself at the feet of each monk to ask his prayers, and from that very day he is to be counted as one of the community. Let's unpack this ritual of a new person becoming part of community. When the novice is making profession, joining Benedict's monastery, his profession document mentions the saints. The novice is invoking, calling to mind all those faithful, exemplary Christians who have gone on before. The saints are members of the heavenly community, and they are witnessing this monk becoming part of a community here on earth. It's like Benedict is saying to the novice, look, you are not only part of this monastic community, but you're becoming part of the community of all the holy people who have gone on before, who are praying for us. Then the document, what we would call a profession formula, also mentions the abbot, the leader who is supposed to represent Christ in the community. In other words, this isn't just joining a bunch of people. This is following Christ, becoming a disciple. And next, the document is placed on the altar. Again, in other words, the place where we regularly commemorate Christ's self-offering for all humanity. Through his actions, the novice is implicitly saying that this isn't some individual action, something he's just doing for himself, but rather he's emulating Christ's offering on behalf of the community of all people. Individualism didn't have any place in Benedict's monastery. Next, the novice recites what is known as the Suscipe, the verse, "Receive me, Lord, as you have promised, and I shall live. Do not disappoint me in my hope." The novice is coming before God with a sense of entitlement, but is not coming before God with a sense of entitlement, but in humility and hope. You notice what happens next? The whole community repeats the verse 3 times and adds the glory be. Everyone, the whole community, in solidarity with the new person, says, yes, we come together before God in humility and hope. It's not just the new guy. Everyone together offers the same prayer. I've always thought that it isn't a coincidence that the verse is recited 3 times, followed by an invocation of the Trinity. My personal theory is that Benedict is invoking the original community, the community of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's our model for community, the Trinity. There's a great Greek word, perichoresis, which is used to describe the relationship between the members of the Trinity. And I once heard this described as a dance of self-giving love between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the original community. How's that for an image of community? So now you have a fancy Greek word you can drop during your next conversation. So then the final step of the ritual is that the novice prostrates himself at the feet of each monk to ask his prayers, and from that very day he is to be counted as one of the community. So becoming part of a monastery involves the humility of prostrating oneself before each monk and asking for prayers. There's no room for an attitude of, I've earned this, I'm entitled to this. But rather, the novice is coming before people and saying, I want to be part of you. Please accept me, that together we may emulate the love of the Trinity. This means when we join a Benedictine community of any kind, our commitment echoes so much more than just my individual choice. It reflects the community of the Trinity, the communion of saints, the self-giving love of Christ. And since community also gets hard, living it out on a daily basis, it can be helpful to keep this broader meaning in mind. We said we'd talk about a few specific characteristics of community. The first one we'll talk about is that community is fundamental for us as Benedictines, because when we are a part of a community, we learn that we are not in charge. The world does not revolve around us. This is not Burger King. We can't have it our way, as the old commercial used to say. Community teaches us that sometimes it doesn't matter what we want or don't want. We may think, I don't want to do X, or I really want to do Y, but the community needs something else. We have to put others first. Now, this is not especially in keeping with human nature of how we seem to be wired. So, community is a chance to learn humility, which is central, critical to Benedict's understanding of Christian life. To be part of a community, I have to put my ego on hold. I'm sure I'm not the only one here listening who doesn't like having to put my ego on hold. For example, I might have a nice day off planned, relaxing, reading a novel, sneaking out and getting some ice cream, but there's a problem and I need to take someone to a doctor's appointment, which will take most of the day. That's community. Someone else's needs come first, and I get a chance to reflect on the reality that it's not all about me. So, community is foundational because it is one of the main ways that we are called to be changed, to be transformed, to learn humility, that each of us is not the center of the universe. The example that I just gave, I have a day off planned and I end up spending the day taking someone to an appointment, is a very concrete example of how community works, of how I am reminded that a core part of who I am is being part of a community. Each of you learn it when you take time out from your busy schedule to join your community in prayer, in retreat, in meetings, in common activities. You may be tired, you may have a million other things to do, you may find the other person in the committee to be irritating, but you're a member of St. Brigid's community, and so you do it. Now comes the second point. Community, like so much of the rule of Benedict, is about practices. Community is a practice. It's something you live every day. It's something you keep living, keep trying, keep doing, and hopefully get better at. When you signed up to come to the retreat today or to listen to the video, you were practicing community. It might have been a nice day for the lake, or you've been busy and just wanted a day off. You had a date with a good book and a glass of wine. But this is your community. This is the commitment you made, and this is how you practice community. So all the people that spent hours planning, making arrangements for this meeting, this retreat, are also practicing community. Your daily prayer, your monthly formation, this retreat and video, they are all practices. They are all part of being community, of living it out. And of course, the thing with practices is that you don't do them once and you've got it. And would that it would be so easy. Do you remember learning to ride a bike or drive a car, how to use a computer? We did it over and over and over and gradually got better. We made mistakes, lots of them, but we learned from them and we started over. From the first time you inquired about the St. Brigid of Kildare Monastery, during the process of becoming connected, you've been practicing becoming a part of a community, going from being an individual to becoming part of a monastic community. And then the third point is that there are core aspects or elements of community. Service is integral to community. Service is how we emulate Christ, by serving others in big and small ways. Some people may be in elected leadership. Some people are the ones who clean up after the potluck. And they are equally valuable modes of service, ways of contributing to community. Then, in addition to practicing service as part of community, we also practice stability. Community always sounds like a wonderful thing, especially if you aren't part of a community. The reality is that communities are full of people, and people aren't always easy. A Benedictine community is about high ideals of faith, prayer, mutual support. But again, since it's full of people, it means that we often don't live up to those ideals, and we get frustrated and we get put upon and all that. But, and this is the key, as Benedictines, stability is a core value and part of being a community. We don't just automatically pick up and find a better monastery down the road. We commit to this community, even when it's hard. We practice stability as part of being community. Another key element of community is that it provides us with support and accountability. Now, I don't know about you all, but personally, the word accountability tends to give me knots in my stomach. It makes me feel like I'm about to be sent to the principal's office or get a bad job evaluation. But that's where support comes in. If I'm part of a community, then there are other community members who will support me in living up to my commitments. If I'm not showing up for prayer, if I'm treating people badly, someone will come and say, hopefully they will, "Hey, what's going on? Are you okay? How can I help?" We practice support and accountability as being part of a community because, as Benedict said, remember, we are going all together to everlasting life. It's a community effort. It's not just an individual one. So what we've talked about at this point is pretty basic. There's probably nothing you didn't know, hadn't thought of, or thought about before. But I want to focus on what we do with these tremendous practices, values, ideals that we have as Benedictines. In other words, how do we live community? How does community become a way that we grow, a way that we ascend the ladder of humility and become transformed people? Community needs to become more real for all of us, no matter what kind of Benedictine commitment we've made. So I'm going to give you some questions to reflect on individually. And then if you are watching this as a video, then I would suggest you take some time, personally, individually, and then hopefully you can also, at some point with a group, also discuss these questions. And so the questions are, how do you practice being part of the St. Brigid's community? What are some concrete examples? What do you do as part of your commitment to St. Brigid's? Second question is, how do you think you've been changed through being a member of St. Brigid's? Hopefully you're not exactly the same person you were when you first came to the community. What kind of growth has there been? And then third, as you reflect on your experience, what might be some invitations to continue to grow in the value of community? Perhaps there are areas of service, of stability, accountability, and support. All of us need to grow in our realization that it's not all about us. There are lots of ways that community leads us more deeply into this Benedictine way of transformation. So as we wrap up, I would just kind of remind you that these are questions and discussions that you won't answer and be done with today or tomorrow or even next week or next year. I'd encourage you to come back to them periodically as you live, learn, grow in your Benedictine community. So many blessings on your journey, and thank you for your witness of this new way of being Benedictine at St. Brigid's. Thank you very much.